The US, the world's leading pork producer. But why are you eating imported meat, right in the middle of America's largest hog farming region? And did you know there are cuts of meat that never appear in US supermarkets, even though they are raised here? Exporting meat but still dependent on imports. Is the US pork industry optimizing profits or creating a trade labyrinth? In this video, we will follow the journey of a piece of pork, from when the pig is still being raised in a barn in Iowa, until it becomes a dish in the supermarket near your home. We will discover what is happening in this supply chain. Why doesn't a product made in the US serve the American people themselves? And if you still think you understand pork, wait until you see. It is no longer just food, but an economic decision, programmed by global algorithms. Because sometimes, the most familiar food is the product of a system you don't control at all, sophisticated enough to make you believe you know what you are eating. Let's start from where the pig is born. In Iowa, the heart of the US pork industry, farms spanning dozens of hectares stretch across fields of corn and soybeans. But you won't hear the squealing of pigs. There are no straw-filled pens, no wooden water troughs. Here, everything is sealed, everything is calculable, and everything has a code. Pigs are raised in a closed system called CAFO, Confined Animal Feeding Operations, where thousands live crowded together in climate-controlled barns, fed by automatic feeders, drinking treated water, and vaccinated regularly according to the system's schedule. The feed, mixed from corn, genetically modified soybeans with added premix microminerals and, in many cases, low-dose antibiotics to prevent disease and promote rapid growth. Although companies claim no antibiotics for growth promotion, a 2023 FDA report shows over 40% of antibiotics consumed in the US still belong to the livestock industry. The goal of this entire cycle is to reach the ideal weight, about 120 kilograms, in just 5 to 6 months. Here, the pig is no longer an animal. It is an input product unit, standardized, programmed, and optimized like a link in a production chain. And who is operating that chain? Names like Smithfield, Tyson Foods, Seaboard, JBS USA, corporations that not only own pig farms, but also control the entire chain, from breeding stock, feed, slaughter, to logistics and export. They don't just raise pigs, they manage the growth process of a living material, according to the very concept of vertical integration, integrating the entire value chain. So what happens when the pig reaches the target weight? It doesn't go straight to the market. It will enter a stage that few people know about, a stage that determines which part will reach you and which part will be sent out to the world. That's when the slaughterhouse begins to operate as a filter for global consumption needs. Unlike the image of small-scale slaughter in the US, slaughterhouses operate like a giant machine. One factory can process over 20,000 pigs per day. According to the USDA, in November 2024 alone, over 10.8 million pigs were processed, yielding 2.33 billion pounds of meat, a huge number. But the significant point is not the production volume, it's the separation process. There, pigs are dissected, classified, and packaged, according to a logic not of the farmer, but of the global logistics system. And the surprising thing is, the meat is not divided by animal, but by country. The US has no demand for certain parts, so these parts are packaged for export. Conversely, other parts, very popular in East Asian culture, are imported back into the US, from Canada, Brazil, Mexico. One product, two flows. One pig, but with no clear nationality. Right from the slaughter line, you no longer have a choice. Because which part you get to eat has been pre-filtered by a system shaping the global market. Right now you might be wondering, so which part are US consumers eating? Which part is being exported? Who is deciding that distribution? A piece of meat in the US might be considered waste, but when it reaches the right market, it will become a specialty. And that makes each large slaughterhouse now not just a place for slaughter, but a center of globalized distribution where consumption decisions have been pre-programmed. This is not accidental. According to the USDA's 2024 export report, pork offal and byproducts account for nearly 30% of the total export volume, mostly to China, the Philippines, Mexico, where cultural and culinary values redefine what Americans consider waste. And if you think this filter ends at the factory, wait until you see how it rearranges the entire US consumer market according to an unseen logic. When a piece of meat leaves the slaughterhouse, it doesn't immediately reach consumers, but must go through a global distribution matrix where tastes are encoded into logistics data flows. In this system, consumers don't choose the meat, but are chosen by it. If you are an average American, you are very likely to only have access to processed products, sausages, cold cuts, ham, because that is how meat is formatted to suit a fast, convenient lifestyle. Meanwhile, if you are an Asian living in the US, you will have to go to specialty markets, look for cuts like pork belly, spare ribs, or fatty pork, things that don't appear in regular supermarkets. You will even have to pay a higher price, even though those parts are produced right in the US. Why is that? Because all US pork has been pre-divided into streams, not according to nutrition, not according to quality, but according to the eating culture of each community. The paradox begins to become clear. Meat produced by the US does not meet the eating needs of the very communities living here. Meat is stratified, not by quality, but by consumer culture. And that has created a paradoxical global supply chain, where what you need is not here, and what you produce is sent very far away. But the most interesting part is yet to come. Next, you will see. The most familiar dish sometimes no longer belongs to you, but to a system that decides for you before you even step into the supermarket. It's not because you don't have the money to buy it. It's not because meat is scarce, but because the system has decided it's not for you. You might live a 30-minute drive from a farm, but still have to buy imported meat from Brazil because the butchering chain in the US doesn't cater to you. And if you think this is just a situation of inflexibility, think again. This is an active design. Slaughterhouses, processing plants, distributors, and supermarkets are connected by consumer data, demand algorithms, and even conditioned perceptions of what good meat is. And what's even more noteworthy, many pork cuts popular with Asians, such as pork belly, spare ribs, fatty pork, are imported from Canada, Brazil, Denmark, because the way pork is butchered in the US does not cater to that style of eating. Meanwhile, offal, which is considered waste in the US, is massively exported to places where those parts are considered delicacies and are highly valued. According to a 2024 USDA report, the US exported 3.03 million tons of pork, worth $8.63 billion, with the largest destinations being Mexico $2.58 billion, Japan $1.38 billion, and China $1.11 billion. But at the same time, the US also imports a large amount of pre-cut meat from countries capable of butchering according to specific requirements. Sounds illogical, but it is completely logical in the eyes of the supply chain, because what they optimize is not what to eat, but who to sell to and in what way. The journey of a piece of pork, seemingly simple, is actually a complex map of production, distribution, culture, and power. We think we are choosing, but in reality, the meat has been chosen for us before it even appears on the shelf. The question is no longer, where does the meat come from? But, who is defining which part you get to eat? In a globalized system, where the pig is divided into dozens of parts, sent thousands of kilometers, labeled, priced, re-exported, then meat is no longer just food. It is the product of a sophisticated control chain, where the consumer is the final destination, but is never allowed to question the journey before. And if the most familiar dish, pork, carries so many layers of meaning, then how many other types of food are going through journeys you've never imagined? In the next video, we will explore another industry, where the product looks ordinary, but its journey hides an entire part of the country's essence, where art is honored. See you on the next journey. You will be surprised by the truth behind it.